Hi again. As I mentioned in the last post, there's a difference between human trafficking and human trafficking for labor exploitation or human trafficking for sexual exploitation. Human trafficking being an overarching term where people are moved cross-nationally or cross-country. They can even be trafficked within their own state or their own city. They're being forced to engage in an activity for the commercial benefit of someone other than themselves. It's a violation of their human rights. I also talked about the fact that human trafficking is a human rights issue, not a gender rights issue. So I want to just keep on going today and look at what is sex trafficking. So sex trafficking has been spoken across America and most of the Western world as being an issue amongst women and girls. Now, historically and geographically, that has been true up until recent years. In 2008, the Department of Justice here in the US released a report stating that 50% of young people that are trafficked into sexual exploitation are now boys as young as 15 years of age. Now, in many African and Middle Eastern countries, that's been the case for years. There is a saying that women are for procreation and boys are for recreation. ISIS used sexual exploitation, trafficking, sexual abuse of young men as a tool in the brainwashing and preparation for suicide bombers. We know that from a fact from the guys that work on our teams that have come back and shared some of the horrific stories of what happens in the Middle East in the war zones over the last decade or so. So the primary distinction between something like sexual trafficking and prostitution is that sex trafficking is involuntary while prostitution is voluntary. It's something that a person can choose to do. Now, in their past, they may have been trafficked, in their past, they may have been abused, but at this point in their life, they choose to become a sex worker or stay in the trade of pornography, and that's a voluntary choice. Now, it's different from a previous instance of trafficking. Now, I know it's a fine line, and people might say, well, one leads to another, and there's very much a correlation between the two, but I'm talking about a definition here. So trafficking in people means the recruitment, transportation, transferring, harboring, or receipts of a person by means of a threat or use of force or any form of coercion, abduction, or fraud or deception of the power, of the abuse of power, and the position of the vulnerability of another person. So when you don't have control over your own ability to be able to move from place to place, the job to do, or what you do with your money, then that becomes a trafficking issue. And that's when it rolls into being sexual exploitation. Now, we know as a fact that 50% of people that are coming across the Mexican border are actually being trafficked. Because when they get there, the way that they repay their mules or the cartels that bring them over is by allowing themselves or being forced into, coerced, manipulated, having no power to say no, into jobs that are a labor job if they're guys, or into sexual exploitation and sexual activities if they're women. So we know these things are happening at the moment, and that's one of the big problems we have with the whole illegal immigration process coming across the border. And I'm not talking about politically. You wave whatever flag you want on that. I'm talking as a human rights issue. These people coming over don't have a choice in what they do when they get here. Well, we all make it about this whole moving across the border for freedom. They don't. They come here and they are forced into labor or they're forced into prostitution, and it's seen as prostitution because they take money for their sex. But then they go back and hand that money over to someone else. So they've got no say in the activities or where the money goes from their activity. So the reality is, no matter how you see it, whether it's human trafficking for labor, forced into agriculture, human trafficking for military, a human trafficking for sex, human trafficking for sexual exploitation, human trafficking for pornography, whatever it is, it's modern day slavery. Someone's rights have been taken from them and they're being forced to engage in an activity which they don't want to engage in, and someone else is benefiting from it. And the reality is this, just like we talked about cobalt and cell phones last post, the reality is you'll go on Craigslist, mate. You'll go on and you'll go and find a companion for the evening. Now that person will be brought to your house or to your Super Bowl party, which is the largest accounts of human sexual trafficking in American history, always happens on Super Bowl night. Comes to your party, comes to your house, that person is used for sex, they look young, you don't check out their age. I don't agree with what you're doing anyway, but you don't check out on this person whatsoever. If this is your deal, whatever. You don't care, and then you say, you turn around and go to church on Sunday, it's no big deal. It's a huge deal. But it's the same for you, love. You sit in your fancy house, it's too big for you, you can't afford it, and you can't be bothered cleaning it. So you respond to a Craigslist ad, some lady turns up on your doorstep, and you get Maria to go clean your mansion. Now, as a result, Maria leaves from there, you having given her $100 or $200, goes home, and for her day's work in America, she's given $10 or $15 and is shoved into a house somewhere in the suburbs with 30 or 40 other people. 30 or 40 other people. They are not exaggerations, they are physics. They are physical numbers from cases we're currently working on. And we perpetuate this because we insist on it, we demand it. We watch the pornography, we get the escort girls, we get the illegal house cleaners, we get the illegal lawnmowers. Now, I'm not talking, this is not an immigration issue, this is a human rights issue. Surely, if you're going to wave the banner for someone to have appropriate legal access to the American system, you should be waving the same banner and paying some sort of personal cost. If you are truly going to see this thing stop, it's going to cost us. It's going to cost us comfort and convenience in order to see modern day slavery end.